So tonight we're going to talk about SEO, and SEO in the context of the modern web, in the context of 2020, basically. So before I get started, just a few words about myself. So my name is Alain. I'm a Google developer expert in web technologies, more specifically Angular. My background is full stack Java developer a long time ago, and now I'm really more focused on Angular since past 9 years now. And I'm the organizer of this group, GDG Sacramento, and the former Angular meetup group, which is now part of GDG Sacramento. So what do? I do a lot of public speaking like this. I also do a lot of technical training. Angular training is my own company, so that's what I do pretty much 40-50% of the time, going on site at companies teaching Angular and web-related stuff. And the remainder of the time, I do consulting, blogging, all things around Angular and web technologies. So that's me. Now, what about SEO? So SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization, which I believe all of you knew about. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here tonight. So the idea with SEO is you have a website, it's online, and you want to make this website shine so that search engines are going to see it, index it properly, and hopefully put you at the top of the search results. That's what SEO is all about. It's trying to get the best rankings, because in today's world, well, if you're on the first page of Google, you exist. If you're on page 2, you pretty much don't. That's really what it is. So SEO. There's 3 different things to consider when you get into SEO. The first one is content. And if you look for SEO advice everywhere online, everybody's going to tell you content, content, content. And it's almost disappointing because you're like, okay, I can write good content. Is it enough? I'm going to cover this with a story in a few minutes, but great content is really the best thing to do, meaning you can do everything else right. If your content is not good, you're not going to get to the top of the rankings. Or if you do, it's just going to be for a short amount of time, and then you're going to have to produce more stuff and that kind of thing. You can hack search engines, but not forever, just for a few months maximum. If you do good content, you're going to stay at the top. That's the important thing. Strategy. So these are the different things you can put in place in order to make sure that your content can be found and shared. Because writing good stuff is good, but if you create your own website tomorrow, write some posts in here, nobody's going to find them. You have to make sure that this link is shared around, that people can find it, that they can like it, that they can put it on Facebook, whatever. Make sure that your content can be discovered. And that's something that's more and more important in the sense that search engines now, they look for social proof all over the place. So if you put something out there and it's liked on Facebook and on Twitter and it's retweeted many, many, many times, these things are now taken into account and help your content get to the top. Which doesn't mean that you have to do that, it's just that it helps a lot, especially when you're new to putting stuff out there on the internet. And the final piece is technology. So technology is what we can do in our code, in the HTML, in JavaScript, or CSS even, to make sure that these search engines, they can parse our website, find the right info, and index it properly. So we'll see how to do that and some tools that can help with this. So that's the plan. We're going to cover these 3 different things. First, I'm going to start with content. And in order to emphasize how content is important, this is a true story. Happened to me a few months back, probably June last year. I was teaching Angular in Texas. And I was in a room with 10 people teaching from Monday to Friday. So talking about Angular. And we do breaks during the day, of course. So I took my break. And when there's a break, I just go away because I don't want to talk anymore. Otherwise, my voice goes away. So during the break, one of the attendees, he had a question for me. But because I was gone, he just Googled it. And the funny thing is that when I came back from the break, he said, well, you know what? I had this question for you. but I could not wait, so I Googled it. And the first response I got on Google was your blog. And I was like, oh, that's good. That's pretty good. So I guess I know SEO a little bit, and it was just perfect. So later on, he did this on LinkedIn, and he said, I was Googling a question I had during the class, and his blog post was the first result that I found. So that was just to prove that content is super important. So he was basically looking for that question, how to do custom form validation with Angular. And if you do that, more or less the same keywords, the same sentence, my post is going to be in the top 4, top 5. So how to replicate that kind of thing? Why did it rank that well? And why does it still rank that well? Well, there's a few things that I did here. First, the post answers a very specific question. And the title of the post is pretty much the question that the people ask. So how to do custom form validation Angular, and my post is how to implement a custom form validator with Angular. So very, very similar. And then that post obviously answers the question. So it was liked on Medium, it was shared around, and all of that, which helps basically push it to the top of the rankings. So I use Medium for blogging, and I think it's important to use a platform. So Medium is one of the hottest right now. Reason why it's good is because these platforms, they want the content to be seen. That's how they make money. They sell subscriptions and that kind of thing to people. So they want your content to be read. So they're going to suggest it to other people. They're going to make sure that people find it, basically. So this helps a lot with discoverability. It's going to make sure that people find it, read it, and hopefully share and like it. And social proof helps. So I only have 8 backlinks to that article, which is not a lot. If you read most of the SEO advice out there, people are going to tell you, oh, you need a lot of backlinks to your content. You need many, many pages that link to your page, and then only you can expect to be on the first page of Google. That works, of course, but it doesn't do everything. If you have really good content that answers a specific need that people are looking for, then you can do it with just 8 backlinks. And these are organic backlinks, meaning that people found the content helpful and created a link to it. It's not something I did by putting a post on different websites. So, yeah, and 139 flaps on Medium, even that is not a lot. If you look at blogs, you have posts with thousands of likes and shares. So I only have 100, and that's good enough in that case. Because again, the main thing is that I answered a very specific question. So you might think, oh, that's easy, I can do that. Let's take a question, I'm going to answer it, write a blog post, and I'm going to end up on the first page of Google results. Well, maybe, maybe not. There's one final hack that I didn't put in here. It's that question was not really answered anywhere else before. And with content, you have 2 options. You can be the first, or you can be the best, or both, but that's what's going to work. You have to be one or the other, or both. So the reason why I blogged about that specific topic is because when I was teaching Angular, I knew that at some point someone would ask that question, and they would ask it over and over again. So after teaching 5, 10 times and always having, hey, how do I do custom validation? Hey, how do I do that? I was thinking, okay, that's an important topic to cover, and if we Google it, there's not much interesting out there. So I said, okay, nobody else did it, I'm going to do that, write that blog post, put it out there, and it just works. So the idea is, if you're a blogger and want to get on the first page of Google, you have to kind of think that way. How can I cover something that nobody else covered properly or deeply enough or in an interesting way, and answer that question, explain that topic, and it works. So that's content. That would be my main things about content. Any questions on that before I move on to the technical SEO piece?
How did you find you had 8 backlinks? Is that through
That's a good question. So how did I find out that I have 8 backlinks? So there's a few tools out there to do that. One of the most popular is ahref.com. And it used to be completely free, but not anymore, because they are very successful. Still, I think that's what I use. I found a link somewhere where they can just give you that kind of info. And they gave me the 8 exact links that's linked to that blog post. That's a very good tool. If you really want to do SEO in depth and take a look at what you have out there and how it's ranked and all of that, you'll get a lot of info from that tool. They also give you a score. So there's a score down here, like 82, 87. That's kind of your page rank. Well, not really the Google page rank, but kind of their own way to rank a page and all that. My blog post, by the way, was only 40 or 50, and it was still on first page. So even an average score doesn't mean much. It depends, basically, on the content and the query to find it. But yeah, that's a tool that I use to do that. There's probably other options.
And what's the name of your blog? Is it still live?
Yeah.
What's the domain on that?
Oh, so the blog is also, so one thing that helps is that I also have a perfect match domain, which is angulartraining.com. So that also helps in SEO a little bit. Used to help a lot, a little bit less these days. But yeah, it helps, of course. If my website was like something that doesn't even mention Angular at all in the domain name, that would be more challenging to rank better. Yeah. Other questions on content?
Can you show what you meant by how do you share on Medium?
Oh, so if you use Medium, you pretty much have nothing to do because the platform does all of the sharing for you. So if you use Medium to create your own blog on there, as soon as you post something, Medium is going to suggest that content to other people who read similar stuff, basically.
Oh, okay.
So if I read a lot of Angular articles and write about Angular, it's going to suggest a lot of Angular stuff to me, like design patterns and API calls and double your salary. Oh, I'm interested in that. Programming habits you should adopt, that kind of thing. So that's basically customized to my profile, what you see here.
So do you make a blog on your website and then share it on Medium? Is that how it works?
You have to publish it on Medium itself. So
okay.
Medium is the platform. It's kind of like WordPress in some ways, but they host everything. The only thing I did to make it a little bit more customized is to use my own domain on top of it.
Oh, okay.
So you can do that. It's a service you have to pay for, of course, to plug your domain on top of that. But then, Medium is gonna do everything pretty much. So the sharing and pushing to other people and everything. So if you want to rank, I would say use a platform. If you're a blogger and want your content to be shared, don't start from scratch. Don't create your own website and expect that to work overnight. It's just not going to happen. I did that before. That's what I can say. It takes a lot of time if you go that route. If you use a platform, it just happens very quickly. I used to blog on Angular, let's say 5 years ago, with just my own blog and no platform. My content would be read by 5 to 10 people. I moved to Medium. The next week I have 200. And it keeps growing and growing. So now it's over 1,000 per day. So yeah, platforms do a lot. Other content-related questions? All good? So next, technical stuff. Technical SEO. So what makes things difficult these days with SEO is that, well, difficult for search engines at least, is that more and more web apps, more and more websites, if you look at the source code, they pretty much look like this. Meaning that it's a React, it's an Angular, it's a Vue.js application. And when you build things that way with lots of JavaScript, then your HTML by default looks like an empty thing, like a body with one element and a few scripts, and that's it. And that's a problem, because a web crawler is going to see just that. So that's a content that gets indexed, and that's not very interesting. So this has been a problem for a long time, and people would have to find solutions to this by, well, having server-side generated content that comes first, and then the actual app that loads after that, or have like a marketing website to promote the app, and then the app is not indexed and it's something different to it, built with Angular, React, Vue, or one of these things. So these would be the two main workarounds that people would do in the past. Do server-side rendering, or have a marketing website for the search engines, and the actual app on the side. But things are changing, because Google, well, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. I'm going to talk about the process first. So how does Google find your website? It can happen two different ways, really. The first way is you create your website and you create an account with the Google Webmaster Console, and you say, hey, I have a new website. Here it is. Index it. And if you do that, Google is going to index it. Not right now, but maybe tomorrow or next week. Well, usually 48 hours is a good range when these things happen. So what Google is going to do is put that website in a crawl queue and then start visiting it and try to see what's in it. So that's one way to get the crawler to visit your website. The only way to do it is to have links to your website. Because what the crawler does is that it's going to load a page and then explore all of the links on that web page, which obviously leads to other pages, but also other websites. And it keeps exploring the web like this all the time, and just going through all of the links. So if you have a lot of links to your content, then it's going to get indexed much more quickly and much more often as well. So that's an important thing to know. So these two tactics get Google to crawl your website. So the crawler is going to open that page and process it. And at this point, the processing is just going to get what we saw earlier. So it's going to see that thing. And it's going to say, oh, okay, not much in here. I'm going to keep that for later. That's all it does. Then a few days, weeks later, depends on how many websites link to your content and that kind of thing. Then what's going to happen is that Google is going to actually try to render that page. So even the JavaScript is going to run. So that's what's happening here in the middle of the screen. Processing, putting in a render queue, and then actually rendering that with Google Chrome, so that it can see everything that's on that page and see the actual text and images and all of that, and starts. And then once this is done, it can actually index the content, see if it's helpful or not, and try to rank your page accordingly. So that's the main process. Question?
So this is gonna, so we don't need any server-side rendering if that's gonna take place.
So that's the perfect question at the perfect time, because I was about to talk about that right away. So before 2019, the trick was that the rendering here was done with a very old version of Chrome. Well, not very old, but let's say 2 or 3 years ago, which in the web is forever these days. So most of the modern JavaScript would not work properly. All of the ES6 stuff basically was out of scope. So your website would get rendered pretty poorly, and because of that, people would do server rendering to just make up for that fact. Now, since 2019, this is gone. The crawler that Google uses, it's the latest version of Chrome. So Google search, Googlebot, when it goes through your web pages, is going to see exactly what you see as a user in Google Chrome. Exactly the same thing, no difference anymore. And that's a huge change in terms of SEO, because now you don't have to worry so much about having a lot of JavaScript or making things dynamic. We know that Google is able to render that and index it. So that's a big news. And if you have just one thing to remember from that talk, that's it. You can go crazy with JavaScript. You're allowed now, that's okay. Now, thing is, so JavaScript is not a problem anymore. Since 2019, Googlebot, as I just mentioned, does that using the latest version of Chrome. So if you see something in Chrome, it can be indexed. Now you probably wonder, yeah, but what if I want to rank for other search engines? Well, that's the market in terms of search engines in 2019. So Google is 93% of everything. And in second position, you have Bing with 2.3%. And then you have Yahoo, 1.6%. So you can spend a lot of time and effort for these remaining 8%, or you can just say, okay, 93 is good enough for me. And the other thing is, all of these other search engines, what they do in order to have, let's say, accurate results is basically copy what Google does anyway. So if a website ranks well in Google, well, they're going to make it rank pretty well as well. So, so it's actually safe. If you rank well on Google, you should be good. And I never worry about the other ones because, well, 93%, right? Yeah.
How does voice search impact that? Because my understanding is a lot of voice search is based off of like an app. Siri is not running through Google.
So when you do a voice search, what happens is that, so using, Google Assistant or Alexa or all of these tools, they just translate your query into actual text. And then they're just calling an API that is your text query. So it doesn't change really anything. The only thing that could possibly change when you do a voice search is if you had a conversation with your assistant. So you ask one thing, then another thing, then a third thing. There's more context. So the AI behind it can use that context to kind of tweak the query and get better results. That's work in progress. So I don't think you will be much changes today, but maybe next year, depending on the conversation you had before you get to the actual search, the result could be different. But yeah, just translating the voice to text at this point, I would say. Yeah.
So according to the new Googlebot updates, there's no need to use Angular Universal anymore.
Yeah.
So just gone?
Yeah. You can say that. I agree. So that's good news, right?
Very good news, because my previous project, we were having a major problem with SEO. Angular Google does not read Angular, so we have to pre-render the whole thing, and gave us a lot of hard time.
Oh yeah, it's server-side rendering on top of Angular or React or any of these things is just not easy. Yeah, that's you.
What time did they do this in 2019? Do you know what month it was?
When did they start doing it? I think it was around this summer that they switched to the latest Googlebot, and it didn't all happen at once. So they still had old bots that would use the old version and some using the new one. So it was a migration basically, and it took some time. But now I think it's safe to assume that everything is just using the latest version. Yeah.
Not clearly said the other search engines are using Google's result. Do they not have their own bots?
They do, but the thing is, so that's a little bit of opinion here, right? The thing is, they're not as good in terms of suggesting the right results at the top. And I say that because you can really rank really bad stuff easily on Yahoo and Bing and all of these engines. Like if you have an exact match domain, for instance, like mine, angulartraining.com, you can be on the first page easily. They're not very picky. And in order to improve, one of the things they do is they just look at the results on Google and they try to influence their own rankings based on that. So it's not exactly the same, but there is some influence that you can see from time to time. What I'm saying is Yahoo and Bing are are basically using Google as well as a way to know whether a website should rank high or not.
So trying to find out how they're using Google. Are they sending the query to Google and seeing if they're
Yeah. They would just have some kind of bot that does that regularly and tries to see what's the most meaningful result for such and such query. Maybe not for all queries, but the most popular ones, for sure, they take a look. Yeah. So that's the state of the market right now. So what can we do to help with SEO? Is there anything we can change in our code, anything we can improve? Tips and tricks, basically. So that seems like a no-brainer, but still, Googlebot sees that kind of error very often. Have unique descriptions and titles and meta tags for every single page or every single screen. And we used to be pretty good with that in the past, before we had Angular and React and all of these tools. Now that we use React or Angular or Vue, we have single page applications, and we tend to forget to change the title or the description of the page when we navigate to a different screen. You have to keep doing that because it actually helps Google a lot in terms of how to render the results. So you'll have a much more meaningful output in the results if the title of your page is actually what the page is about. So it's something that we used to do all the time because we had individual pages. And now that we have Angular or React or Vue, we got lazy and we don't change that. We just use the same title all over the place. So don't do that. Change it and try to make the title and description and meta tags as meaningful as possible. Search engines like that a lot. The other thing is get your links right. Because even if Google is going to render your JavaScript properly, it's still like good old real links. So that links with an href. So if you have links, just use href and use actual links too. So mistakes, things to not do, don't use onClick. Or don't use href equals a hashtag or href equals JavaScript something. Try to have really plain old href like we would do without all of the JavaScript frameworks that we have these days. Don't do links with buttons, because that's another thing. The bots are not going to try to click buttons, they're only going to follow links. So, and same thing with spans or divs or all of that. If you want a link, just make it a link. It can look like a button, as long as it's an A tag with an href. That's what Google wants. So that's an easy fix, usually. Another thing is to keep using good-looking, human-readable URLs. So what do I mean by that? So example.com/traditional URL, or example.com/blog/how to do this thing. What is not so good is to have fragment identifiers. And that's also something that we are doing more and more with Angular and React, and have like single-page applications with different screens. And if we don't use HTML5, then we would have these fragments in the URL. And the thing is that Googlebot just ignores the part after the fragment. It's just not gonna take it into account. So if you want things to be indexed properly, just use regular URLs, and then you're good to go. So that's also an easy fix. And it's an easy fix because HTML5 does that, so you can have client-side navigation using regular, good-looking URLs, and that's been around for a while. So if I go to caniuse.com, so the name of the API behind this is the history. Not session history API. Yeah, that's the one. So that's the one that allows us to play with the URL and make client-side changes to it. And you can see that the support is pretty good all over the place. Even IE10 does it, and that's really old. So that's good. So you can use that. Only exception would be if you want to work with IE 6 to 9, but don't do that. So that's another easy technical fix that you can do. Just use good-looking URLs. Use rich results. So that's something that's not going to help the ranking so much, but it does help your content to look good in the search results. What are rich results? So these are the kind of cards that you can see from time to time when you look for something on Google. Sometimes you're going to see, like, you know, a Wikipedia article with a nice image and a title and that kind of thing. So it's going to create cards based on the content that gets returned by a search. And in order to make this happen, you basically add some structured data to your web page. So it's just a description of keys and values that Google is going to use and parse to build these cards for you. So using structured data doesn't guarantee that this is going to happen, but if a page ranks really well, then it is going to happen. If you're like top 1, 2, 3 results, it's going to be good looking like this. So if you want to learn how to do that, there's a lot of resources on Google itself. So they have this search gallery where you can provide the info. So if you want to have a list of your top stories, for instance, or if you're trying to list a book, or you want to provide breadcrumbs, or a carousel, or a bunch of different courses that you want to list, all of these different things, you can provide data that Google can use to do that rendering for you. And let me find an example of that, just to show you that it is pretty easy to put in place. Yeah, that's an example right here. So that's what the structured data looks like. So it's a script that you add to your web page. It has the following type, which is JSON, and then you provide a schema, you provide some types, and all of these different keys and values, they come from Google itself, so you have to just implement that. So here they provide the name of the organization, the logo, and the description, and the name of the author, that kind of thing. So again, this doesn't guarantee that your content is going to rank better, but it helps. It helps things look good, and it doesn't hurt, that's for sure.
So what's the purpose of this tool?
The tool here is to test if the syntax that you use actually works. So if you made a mistake in your syntax, or if everything gets parsed properly.
Okay. So is that similar to like the W3 validator, I think it was called?
Somewhat, yeah. So W3 validator is to check that your HTML is valid, so the structure of your HTML. Here it's really some JSON that gets used by Google search to make things look differently on search results. So it's specific to Google, which is why this tool comes from Google itself, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Should it be visible on your page, inside your domain?
Oh yeah, it is. So I did that on my website. So let's go to angulartraining.com. That's my website. If I inspect it, you'll see that at the top here, we should be able to find my, so it's in the header. Title, meta, script, lots of stuff. It's similar to it in some ways. Only difference, it's a JSON or a set of JSON objects that you are providing. Yeah, there it is. So I did that just to define the name of my company, the URL to the website, where to find the logo, what is the contact point, my phone number, and that kind of info.
This is just a map for Google to see where
Yeah.
but it's not visible on your website.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just some info hidden in the header that the crawler is going to know how to parse and what to do with it, but it doesn't change the look and feel of the website in any way. Yeah. 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 Yeah, you can use many of those, as long as you have multiple different script sections for each of these JSON syntaxes. Yeah, you can have many. So you can have a carousel, you can have books, courses, anything you need. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Aha. So, thing is, if a website is really popular and well organized, like has a sitemap and that kind of thing, Google can guess and provide some of that layout automatically. Like the most popular pages are going to be highlighted and that kind of thing. Which is frustrating because if you're well known, you kind of, it's cheating a little bit. But yeah, usually we have to do the work, the rest of us, which is not too much work. So that's good news. If you follow these websites, they have examples. You can pretty much just copy paste, edit with your data, put that on your web page, and you're good to go. So fairly easy. So that's if you want to get that kind of display. A few more things. So these are part of the common mistakes that people make without knowing that they make them. So if you have pages that you don't want to be indexed, like error pages, 404, that kind of thing, then tell Googlebot to not do it. And the easiest way to do it is to have a robots.txt file at the root of your domain. That's going to have some text like this that says, hey, Googlebot, by the way, don't visit anything that's under the /private path because I don't want you to go there. It's private. So you can list all of the pages, folders, anything you don't want to be indexed would have to go there. And that way, Googlebot is just going to ignore those pages. And yeah, the reason why you want that kind of thing is because if you don't, you might end up with something like this, where your 404 page gets indexed and shows up very nicely in the search results with an error occurred, and that's not great.
You would do that on the robots?
You can, yeah, you would do that with the robots. Or you can have some sort of, yeah, that's the easiest way to do it. The other way would be to see, oh, it's a robot trying to index, so I'm going to redirect from 404 to a different place, but that's risky. So I would go with a robot.txt, yeah. So we saw a few tips and tricks. Now, what about some tools to help with SEO? So the first one, that's really my favorite. It's called Lighthouse. And Lighthouse is a tool that does SEO audits, and not just that, a lot more than just SEO. It's also going to help you with best practices for your website, accessibility, performance, and progressive web apps. The good news is that Lighthouse is part of Google Chrome. So if I want to use Lighthouse, I just go to Chrome, I go to any website I want to test, and in the DevTools, I go to Audits, and I would land here. So that's Lighthouse. And here I can say, well, run that audit for a mobile, or not mobile, I'm going to do desktop. I want to test everything. So performance, progressive web app, best practices, accessibility, SEO. We're going to use the real network, no simulation of slow 4G or anything else. And then we run it. And you just do that, and it's going to do a bunch of tests on your website. So see how fast it is, if you're implementing the best SEO practices, all of that. And then it gives you a score. So you know, oh, here I'm doing good, here I'm doing bad. And the best part of it is below all of these scores, you get action items. So things you can do to improve SEO or improve speed or all of that. And they tell you exactly what to do. Like, oh, this image, it's too big, change it with another one. Or this keyword doesn't seem to be a good idea, change that. It's really doing a lot of interesting work. So it's still auditing right now. It takes a few seconds. Suspense. Yeah. So it's checking what's happening if we're offline, what's happening if we don't have JavaScript, I would guess. And now it's generating my report. So that's my score. That's not great. SEO is good. Thing is, so when we run this, one of the things that I did wrong here is that I ran it with many different extensions on my browser. So usually it would tell me, oh, you run with extensions, not a great idea because these extensions can slow things down a little bit. I'm on Wi-Fi, which is not ideal for performance. Yesterday I was much better than this, but that's okay. So what I want to show you is the following down here. So all of the suggestions that you get, all of the things you can improve. So here they're telling me that make sure that text is still visible when we load the fonts, for instance. Minimize main thread work. Well, that's basically use less JavaScript. Not easy. Reduce JavaScript execution time. So it took 3.3 seconds in my case. The good thing is you have that report, you can act on it, and then you can run it again and see the difference and a better score and things that improve. So I would recommend that. Definitely a lot of good info. I did SEO perfectly. That's great.
About the 51 areas you have.
Oh, these are warnings that would show up in the console, and most of them are related to cookies. This is happening because Google is changing the way they're going to deal with cookies this year. And before they do the change, they just show all of the warnings. So every time you have a cookie, you get a warning, hey, cookie, blah, 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 and a lot of info about what's going to change with cookies info. So that's all of the warnings. So that's the best tool. Use Lighthouse, you're going to get a lot of insights. Yeah. So that's a very good question. The SEO audit that they do in Lighthouse is not a Google bot audit. It's more of an audit in terms of, do you have metadata, do you have titles, do you have descriptions, so do you do all of the things properly on your web page? It's not going to see how it actually renders or these kinds of things. In order to do that, you can use a different tool, which is almost the next in my list, so I'll get back to it. One more thing you can do is make sure that your app works nicely on mobile. And even if you're thinking, I don't care about mobile, it's actually crazy. Something like 60 to 70% of the internet traffic comes from these devices. So if you say I don't care about mobile, you're pretty much ignoring almost 3/4 of internet traffic, which is mind-blowing, but that's the way it is these days. People just use mobile devices for everything. So this link here will get you to a simple page. You can enter your URL, run a test, and it's going to say, hey, your page is mobile-friendly, or it's not. And just like Lighthouse, it would tell you, change this or change that in order to be mobile-friendly. So that's a mobile-friendly test. And the final one, final tool that's very, very important is the Google Search Console. Used to be called the Webmaster Tools. They just rebranded everything and redid it past 2 years, I think. So the look and feel is different now, and they're providing a lot more integrations with AdSense, analytics, all of these different things in one place. So you can get a ton of information right there. And you can get the info about how Google sees your website. That's where you can see it. You can ask a Google bot to run and see the results that Google gets from when they go to your page. All of these things can be done from here. You can see the last time a page was indexed. For instance, here they submitted a sitemap. It was on January 1st, 2018, and it was read for the last time on December 31st. So you can see when Google went through this for the last time and what it did with it, and the status was a success. So you know that what you did is basically good. There's no syntax error, all of these things. So this is essential. If you want to do any amount of SEO, you have to do that. Because it's going to give you so much info from Google itself. So you cannot beat that. Yeah?
When I use that, like you said, there's so much information. What are like the most important things, maybe like key things?
The most important thing, so one thing that to do well now is that if you're doing things bad, they're going to give you warnings. So they're going to highlight in red or orange in some sections, oh, there's something to take a look at here. So when you see it, you just go take a look and you can dive deeper into what's wrong. So if a page, for instance, doesn't return anything, but it's listed in the sitemap, that would get highlighted right away and tell you, oh, there's a link here that's wrong, or there's something that you're doing wrong. So it's mostly automatic when things go wrong. But yeah, it changes so often. I mean, I took a look at this a couple of days ago when I prepared this talk, and it was different from the page I saw 3 months ago. So it's always evolving, but it's getting better and better. There's so much stuff in here. I would just go section by section and try to find some interesting stuff. One of the For the Googlebot question, I see if I can find it, because I know they changed it. I knew where to find it. Do I still know is the thing. Legacy tools and reports, web tools, maybe this one. No. Core stats. Yeah, so these are good numbers. Tells you how much time it takes for Google to crawl your pages in milliseconds. So that day looks like something was wrong. Took a lot of time. Much more downloads as well. So you can get that kind of info and much more from here. You can also ask the bot to crawl your website and give you a report about it. Let's see if I can take a look at that now. Why does everyone ask that question? And the answer is no, because when I did it, I knew that it was not a good idea for SEO 3 or 4 years ago. So I just used regular HTML and CSS. But now I could use Angular. And it's saying that that URL is not on Google, which is not true. Index, not because of an error, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm not going to waste time with that, but yeah, you can play with it. You can waste half a day having fun with this. There's so much to look at. Yeah, performance, overview, all of these things. So if you want to find all of the things I mentioned during this talk, I suggest 2 main resources. The first one is Martin Splitt. That's this guy. He works for Google. He works for the search engine team. He's based in Switzerland. And all of the tips and tricks I talked about today come from him. He's a very good guy. You can basically ask him on Twitter and he's going to answer. That's how good he is. And he works for the team behind Googlebot and all that. So he knows stuff better than me. So I would suggest to follow him on Twitter. He's also the one doing, well, many talks for Google at every single conference on SEO. He's the one doing it. And on the Google Webmasters channel on YouTube, they have a bunch of tutorials as well. And he is doing these videos. So if you go to that channel, lots of very good advice. What I gave you tonight is a summary of all of the stuff you can find here. There's more, obviously, but yeah, that's the essence of it. So that was my last slide.